Honestly, I don't know what I'm gonna call this. Part one to what if Issei was a copycat, I guess. Alright, before someone starts saying what about the other series, I'm gonna continue that someday. Don't mind the background noises. It's my parents. Uh, Usually record at night, so this is a new experience for all of us. So yeah, let's continue. Alright, we just a bit of backstory on this. Issei's sacred gear is how can I say this? It's gonna be interesting to say the least. It's not gonna physically appear. I guess it changes appearance, but the only real difference that you'll see is when, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna explain it later down the line. But yeah, we switch to currently two babies lying in a crib. This was Issei Hyodo and well, his sister in this case. Whoa, give me a second. Honestly, fuck, I don't have a name. Uh, you know what? Let's make them triplets. It's gonna be Issei, Ryu, and I still don't have a female name. Give me one more minute. And Aiko. Aiko, yeah, Aiko. So it's Issei, Ryu, and Aiko. You might be confused by this. And I'm gonna say this. Both of Issei's siblings share, well, one sacred gear in this case. It being the boosted gear, meaning both of them have, well, two halves of drag. If you're gonna ask me how, fuck, I don't know. Let's just go with it. Issei in this case, like I said in the first place, is gonna have a copycat, meaning he's not gonna have, well, the boosted gear in this. First I'm making this type of story. But later down the line, Issei was, well, unfortunately not given most affection in most cases. Issei being, well, Issei's cold, right? He he's on his own. I mean, his parents did. Issa wasn't neglected, but it was just mind his business. He wasn't around his parents as much as his other two siblings. So what? So Issei is gonna just mind his own business. He's gonna stray. He's gonna stand a little distance away from his parents and siblings. So Issei basically just ignores him. Right? Man's minds his own business. And all three of them are basically twins. They look exactly the same except for the genders, but one of them being female. And also another thing that separates Issei from his siblings is that he has heterochromia, meaning one of his eyes is, well, has a shocking resemblance to, well, a jet black color. His eyes is just basically just jet black. One of his eyes is jet black, and the other one, well, is, well, normal brown that he has. And while he is the middle one, Ryu being the oldest and Aiko being the youngest, that really doesn't change anything. Since Issei still beats, well, Ryu in anything, whether it be physical or, well, academic wise, yeah, he has more potential than both of his other two siblings. So Issei just looks Issei's just in a league of his own, right? Compared to his other siblings, Ryu being more, well, into sports like basketball, and Aiko being more into, academics per se. And so as they grew older, the, well, three of them seemed to grow distant from each other, since all three of them had their own goals in mind. Ryu's being to be, well, the quote unquote best basketball player. Aika Aiko's being, well, just have a nice life, a fancy life. He says Issei doesn't exactly know what his goal is. Yes, he wants to become something, but right now he has no idea what. So Issei is just on his own plane. Right? Man's is just different. And so that's when we time skip to well, how can I say this? High school years. Rio being a second year, and both Issei and Aiko being first years. Issei also took note of a few things. This being that he could copy anything he wanted, whether it be physical, ability, form, or power. It didn't matter. He immediately took note of this when he was able to dribble a basketball easily when he was watching his mother. I mean, he went into this a bit more and learned that he wasn't just any fast learner. He was like a copycat. He was out here copying anyone. So Issei watches a lot of things. He watches boxing, basketball, and how can I say this? Anything sports related. He does not discriminate in anything. So Issei is Issei is just interesting. But I digress. Issei took note of a few things, and that is both of his siblings seem to have joined the occult research club, or in short, the ORC. The president being Rie Esquimari, and having most members. This being Kibayuro, the Prince of Ko Academy, Akeno Himajima, one of the queens of Ko Academy, and Kanako Tojo. I think that's how you pronounce it. Don't know. This being the mascot of the school. Issei, took note of his siblings being a bit more, how can I say this, weird around him per se. They weren't being distant with him, it's just that they were keeping his distance, they were keeping the distance. Issei didn't mind this since, he was always used to being alone. He didn't really care about this. And so, Issei went on with his daily life, being completely unaffected by this. Man just didn't care. And that is when his life took a interesting turn. Issei was just, once again, going on one of his daily hikes, but he felt a pulse in his right eye. The place where his black eye was, jet black eye. Issei, put a hand up to his eye and, just started to rub it. And that's when burning and, the burning and searing feeling became a bit more, intense. And it grew only as Issei continued to, walk or, continue on his hike. Eventually, the pain was so bad that Issei had to take a break. Now, remember, Issei has felt pain. I mean, occasional eye pains, but it had never gotten this worse before. Issei just continued to rub his eyes before he began, feeling that, it was going away. Issei went to grab his phone and, brought it up to his eye. And what Issei saw, amazed him. There his eye was. It almost seemed to have how can I say this? A mirror type of thing in it. His iris seemed to take the form of a mirror. Issei, saw the reflection of the phone in it. And, Issei quickly, just blinked. And that's when it all went away. As if it never happened. I had to swallow a bit of saliva there, sorry. Issei was, confused by this since this has never happened before. He shook his head and wondered if, everything played a part in this. The fact that he could copy anyone he watched or anything he watched. I mean, he couldn't exactly copy the behaviors of animals, but it was, interesting. And All of a sudden, Issei gets his time interrupted by a voice behind him. Issei turned around and saw a interesting being, one having jet black feathers and seeming to have a striking resemblance to a angel, except for the, as before mentioned, black feathers. Issei took note of this and, saw that the being was male. Interesting clothing, but as far as he could tell, it seemed to be almost like a cosplay to him. Issei shook his head, turned around, and began to walk away. But briefly stopped and looked back. Issei saw something made of light being chucked at him, and that's when time seemed to slow, and Issei heard the cracking of glass. Issei quickly threw his body to the left, and looked back up, and just saw the thing being embedded into the ground. Issei looked up and saw the same for the same before mentioned being giving him a what seemed to be a devilish smirk. Issei brought his hand up. Issei brought his hand up to his eye, and that's when he saw a light begin to reflect off of it. Issei felt a power deep within him, almost calling to him. Issei clenched his hand, and that's when it began to materialize. This same light spear appeared in his hand, and Issei seemed to be shocked by this. He looked up and saw the same being staring at him in mild surprise. But before Issei could ponder on this any while, he quickly took he quickly took a pose akin to a javelin, akin to someone about to throw a javelin. Issei quickly ran forward a few steps before hurling the light spear right at the fallen angel. It seemed to pierce one of his wings, and seemed to cleanly cut through and disappear after getting all the way through to the other side of the wing. The being seemed to quickly reach up in an attempt to just kindle the bleeding. He looked back up and he looked over at Issei and grit his teeth. He summoned another light spear before once again throwing it at him. Issei just looking at this and feeling the power of light coursing through him. He quickly tried to manipulate another light spear, but was single-handedly stopped as he felt the spear just go through his shoulder. It dragged him along and embedded itself into a tree before quickly disappearing in a burst of brilliant light. Issei shook his head and just once again made another light speed before precisely aiming it and once again jumping up and taking a few steps forward before throwing it full speed at the fallen angel. It seemed to once again hit the guy right in the chest in this case. Issei was surprised as he saw the light spear just cleanly go through the man's chest. Issei's eyes grew wide as blood began to flow from the man's mouth. He seemed to mumble a few words before falling backwards. The last thing Issei was able to hear was him saying that he was defeated by an insignificant mortal, a human being. The man cursed under his breath before his eyes began to fade of light. Issei merely shook his head and looked down at his hands. He clenched them and, turned around and began to walk off. And that's where I'm gonna end it.